The Wes Penre Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The Second Level of Learning. http://wespenre.com. Metaphysics Paper Number 2, Creation of Universes. By Wes Penre, Friday, June 15, 2012. Revised, December 12, 2012 at 4:30 a.m. http://wespenre.com. Part 3. 8. Dimensions and Densities Revisited. For the truth seeker, it's not easy to understand dimensions and densities, because there is a jungle of information and disinformation out there, and it's easy to get confused. It has taken myself a long time to understand them, and I'm sure there is much more to learn, but the following is what I have learned so far. Many students of metaphysics think of dimensions and densities, in metaphysical terms, not in terms of the science community, as something lofty and perhaps even non-physical. This is not the case. From our 3D, third-dimensional, standpoint, they would indeed be, but for those who travel them, they are just as physical as this one. We have been trained by those who entrapped us not to see these other realms, and the frequency fence around the planet, which we in our own ignorance are helping to maintain, is also highly contributing to our inability in becoming multidimensional and be able to experience them. The trap, however, is much larger than just a frequency fence around the planet, as we shall see. The rabbit hole goes really deep, but by understanding how it was done, we can reverse the flow and have it undone. That is the way to do it, and I will discuss that very thoroughly here in Level 2, and it may probably extend into Level 3 as well. First of all, 3D is not what humans today think it is. We are trained only to use 5 senses and a very small part of our DNA. There is a connection between senses and DNA activation, and call that 3D. If someone starts experiencing things outside these 5 senses, they are either witches, crazy, or oddballs, pick one or all the 3 of them. In other words, the PTB. See to that those who look outside the box are ridiculed by the scientific community and the mainstream media. Often, they don't even have to do that. A belief in the 3D reality as being all that is deeply embedded into our very DNA, which was hijacked by the invader force. Still, just to make sure we didn't get it, the evil Catholic Church burned second seers at stake. Nice people. And the Catholic Church is still the biggest religion on earth. Well, that was in the past, today's Catholics say, and now it's nothing like that. Really? The only difference is that it's gone underground. What about all the pedophilia scandals in high places within the church? Even when that really comes out in the open, you can bet on that, as horrible as it may seem, it's just the tip of the iceberg. So we can see how deeply rooted the lies are in our very being and how we use any illogical ways we can think of to justify keeping the lies alive. However, the oppressors are losing ground quickly these days, and many people cease their memberships in those horrific religions. Real pious Roman Catholics can be found mostly in the Hispanic nations these days, where the religious programming is still very alive and active. The cease in membership is great news, however, and shows that people are beginning to wake up. The decrease in membership is probably much due to the exposure of the same pedophilia scandals within the church lately. The patriarchal regime has turned everything upside down / inside out. If they say something is white, you can immediately presume that it's black and vice versa. So also when comes to Satanism as a dark force. The worst satanic organizations are our established religions. Then, of course, in usual manner, if the PTB promotes Satanism as something evil, it's probably the opposite. And it is, something I touched on in the previous paper. The last 60 years or so, people have started waking up quicker than ever before. There are many factors involved as to why this is, but we're coming towards the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new, so people are getting a chance to make a choice which way to go from here. This means more and more are starting to realize that there are more dimensions than the 3, plus time, that we know of. In fact, there is nothing wrong with the third dimension, it's a natural dimension in the universe, but there are many, many more. The only thing that's wrong with 3D is when a universe, or part of a universe, is locked into that frequency. Then we have densities between every two dimensions. Densities are more vague in that it's hard to number them. They are just different nuances of a given dimension. Density indicates grade of solidity, and that's how I see densities. It's the grade of perceived solidity between two dimensions. So it wouldn't be wrong to say that something you experience is from the second density of the sixth dimension, if that's how you want to catalog them. Then, there are other ponds with ripples, universes, in them, so potentially there are an endless amount of universes. Also think of it as yourself being a grain of sand on a shore, and there are many shores. It is my understanding that new ponds with universes in them are being created as creation moves on. For example, what happens when a being has come to a point in their evolvement when they have overseen a universe and that universe has met its goals? Well, we can argue that this being wants to take on yet another universe and start all over, but it's also my impression that we normally, when things are as they are supposed to, do things in one go and then move on. However, it is all by choice, and if a being wants to take on another universe, they would be able to. Anyway, when someone is ready and has completed overseeing a universe, it's time to oversee a pond of universes and appoint others to oversee single universes in that pond. Does this remind you of something? If you have read C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia, one book in the series was called The Magician's Nephew and was about two children, Diggory Kirk and Polly Plummer, who left our 3D world and entered the woods between worlds where there were different puddles. Each puddle led to a different universe and Diggory and Polly decided to explore one of the worlds by jumping into one of them. The story goes on from there. And people say that C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien were not highly initiated in secret societies and had inside information? Nonsense. They may have denied it, because they wanted this information out but couldn't reveal where it came from. The whole Narnia series and The Lord of the Rings are filled with truths, often more so than anything you learn in the universities. Lewis and Tolkien, both teaching in universities, taught the students one thing during the day, most of it indoctrination so that the students could be trapped into the system, and during the night they sat under the lamplight and wrote about how things really are. This doesn't mean that Narnia and Middle-earth have existed precisely in the way the authors described them, but they are metaphors, and if you read between the lines, you will learn things about the universe you probably didn't know before. When a planet is seeded and a species is created and starts to develop and evolve, more often than not, it all begins in 3D, just like here on Earth. As they evolve, they eventually come to a point where the physical 3D body seems more like an obstacle than an asset, and each member of the species, or the species as a group, can make the decision if they want to keep the body and explore the multiverse from there, like we were designed to do here in the Living Library, or just leave the body behind and explore the multiverse solely in other dimensions without a stationary 3D body. They learn that everything is by choice in a free will universe. This is how it's supposed to be, but again, as above, so below, predators exists on many levels of existence. There are star races who dedicate their existence to hijack 3D worlds with 3D beings and enslave them, and sometimes they even terminate evolved races who are already living there and create their own slave species that can serve them. This is unfortunately not uncommon in this universe that we live in. We need to get the halo off of star beings who are more evolved than us. Out in the universe there is just as much variety as it is here. There are highly benevolent, wise beings in a mix with warlike, low vibrational entities. And there is everything in between. Statements by some researchers that all ETS out there in our near space are benevolent is an illusion at best and a delusion at worst. So how does an alien perceive other dimensions and densities that are not accessible to us under current conditions? Well, a reliable source told me that if a species is of a certain star system, but are not living in 3D, they still have bodies, if they so wish, but can create and uncreate them at will, as we shall see when we come to the section where the soul is explained from a new, very interesting standpoint. Dimensions enable sight clarity, future telling, possible outcomes and best choice to move forward, I think that explains it pretty well and also expands our thinking quite a bit. Something to ponder. When we are established, let's say in a specific star system, and want to experience all dimensions the way they are, we do have to access the nano world, i.e. the world that is the size, or smaller than, atoms, molecules, electrons, neutrons and positrons etc. Therefore, an interdimensional being shrinks itself to nano level, or wouldn't be able to travel the universe in any larger terms. It would probably be possible to travel through certain stargates with a physical ship, but it's inconvenient and would be something a star race would do as a Type 2 civilization only. To read up on Type 0V civilizations, see the Wes Penre papers, Exopolitics paper number 1, 6 different types of civilizations. These different types of civilization is a classification basically done by mainstream science and is based on the technological development of a species. In fact, if a species is not, after have reached a Type 2 civilization, can't figure out that nano-travel is the way to reach the stars and the endless dimensions, they must, in some manner, be under the control of other, sometimes unseen forces, who are steering the developing species towards a high-tech society. It's not a normal way to evolve. Instead, a Type I civilization, heading towards a Type 2, would be one where the species has realized that technology and space travel don't go hand in hand, and they would reduce technology to the minimum in their society and learn how to space travel in the nano world. Here, however, we need to separate the 96% Mother Goddess universe, the KHAA or the void, and the 4% physical universe, which we call the three-dimensional universe or 4-space/time, if we include time in it as well. These two terms need some extra attention to be understood. In the KHAA is where nano-travel happens. As I have explained earlier, the KHAA is the dark energy and matter between stars, nebulas, and galaxies. The KHAA is a universe by itself, with its own, for us unseen planets, stars, nebulas, and galaxies. Those who dwell in the KHAA dwell in the body of the Mother Goddess. The KHAA had its own dimensions and densities as well, and to travel in the KHAA, you shrink yourself into nanoparticles and travel space distances instantly. No stargates or vortexes are necessary. You think yourself somewhere and a nanosecond later you are there. The easiest way to understand this is to compare it to Star Trek's character named Q. He could appear in the physical, seemingly from nowhere, and disappear just as quickly. He could also manifest whole realities when he wanted to. They were just illusions to the Enterprise crew, and after a while these realities disappeared and the crew were back on their mothership. Or did they actually leave? All this and more you can do as a star being living in the KHAA. It's also well explained in Jane Roberts' book, Seth Speaks, where Seth explains how he, when living in other dimensions, can manifest whole planet systems with life forms and everything and live there and mingle with his own creation. He can also go to real worlds in an instant by just thinking himself there. The KHAA starts in the 12th and 13th dimension and goes on from there. The KHAA, or the void, is also called the Orion Empire. No technology whatsoever is required there to travel between stars and planets. You travel in your thoughts and manifest with your avatar. Your everlasting soul is your fire, the fire of the Mother Goddess. Then we have the 4% physical universe, which for long we thought had only 4 dimensions. Now, however, with string theory, scientists believe there are actually 11 dimensions in the physical universe, and an abundance of densities. At this point, they have very little knowledge about what these dimensions do, but in fact, they are all inhabited by physical and non-physical star beings and star races, who can travel between those dimensions. This is the universe you and I currently live in. I can understand that the metaphysical researcher may be utterly confused regarding dimensions and densities. Some, like string theorists, claim there are 11 dimensions, while the channeled RA material, the Cassiopeans, and many others subscribe to that densities/dimensions come in octaves, just like octaves on a musical instrument, 8 densities or dimensions, as they claim that dimensions and densities are the same thing. Others, like Nadine and her Guardian Alliance claim 15 dimensions. So, what is correct? I would say, all of them. Our logical mind wants everything in order and presented in a way that it can understand, but this is not always possible in a fluid multiverse. The number of dimensions and densities are not as important as it may sound. It's all very subjective, and anyone can divide space and time into as many sections as they want to make sense out of it. So, whatever feels comfortable for you is okay. Personally, I think it's easiest to work with octaves and 11 dimensions, respectively. Then the 12th dimension would be the beginning of the KHAA, or when I work with octaves, the 8th dimension or density is the beginning of a new transformation, something we will touch on in the next paper. In our 4% universe, which I mostly will call the physical universe from now on, nano-travel doesn't occur and is probably not even possible. There are humans I have talked to who say they have nano-traveled to other star systems and dimensions without technology, but in fact, these people, unbeknownst to them, have traveled the KHAA, and not the physical universe. They could do so only because they were human. Other star races in the physical universe can't do this, and that's why they are jealous of us, something I will go into details about later. The key word here is technology. In the physical universe, which has its own dimensions and densities, star beings can't travel without technology. They need stargates and portals to travel from star system to star system, and they need spaceships of some kind to do the job for them. These spacecrafts don't need to be made of nuts and bolts and be driven with rocket fuel that's Stone Age, but rather, they use interdimensional ships that can withstand the pressure of going through both stargates, black holes, white holes, and portals. More often than not, their bodies need to be genetically manipulated as well to be able to survive space travel, unless they are non-physical beings, so-called onto-energetics. In our universe, star beings know how to fold space, as well as travel through stargates, black holes, and portals. The typical way for a star race to travel from, let's say, the Large Magellanic Cloud to Earth would be to choose a stargate close to them which takes them onto an intergalactic highway, which can bring them long distance until them come to the other side of the stargate, leave hyperspace, and enter 4D space again, 3 dimensions and time. They may middle land in the Pleiades, where there is a black hole, and continue on to Peshmetan, our local galactic highway, and end up on Earth. This whole journey may not take more than a few days, Earth time, or if the route is more direct, it could happen almost instantly. So, here is an easy summary. The difference between traveling in the physical universe and the KHAA is that in the physical universe you need technology to travel, and a body which can hold up in space conditions, while in the KHAA you just travel on a nano level, using your fire and your avatar. Interestingly enough, I was listening to a Pleiadian tape as I am updating this paper, and they talk about the Greys and how some of them are us in the future, coming back to recapture our DNA so they can once again become like us, but also that there are other types of Greys, created in laboratories here on Earth. These particular Greys are meant to be used for space travel long distance, being half human and half insects, hence having the look of an alien Grey. It has been noticed that the Greys have the perfect body for interstellar space travel, and they can survive the space radiation for a long durations of time. Incidentally, Robert Morningsky, at http://robertmorningsky.com, says exactly the same thing, that there is a very secret space program where they mix human DNA with that of a special fly, which is resistant to radiation. So we see where the future Greys may originate from. So, for us humans to distinguish if a star being or a star race comes from the KHAA or the physical universe depends on their dependency on technology. A KHAA being doesn't need technology to travel and can just manifest like Q in Star Trek, without using spaceships. If you see a spaceship/UFO in the sky, you can be pretty sure it's either our own military, or ETS residing within the 11 dimensions of the physical universe. This doesn't mean they have to be malevolent. There are lots of benevolent star races in the physical universe, too. It can still be problematic to distinguish between a KHAA being visiting the physical universe and someone who resides here permanently. However, because there are lots of multi- and interdimensional beings in the 4% as well, who can use their avatars to manifest in any shape and form they wish. The difference is that the KHAA beings cannot live here in a 3D physical body that they bring with them from the KHAA, but have to incarnate in a fetus in order to descend to a 3D world, or become a walk-in in order to stay here, which rarely happens and is always an intrusion, while the 4% star races have more options. If they are 3D like us and have learned to travel through space, they may come in their real bodies and land here in spaceships, or if they are interdimensional, we won't be able to see them, unless there is a bleed-through between dimensions or densities. Interdimensional beings can use their avatars to manifest in whatever form they choose. Thus we have shape-shifting. Most alien races who have interfered with human evolution, and are still here today to control and manipulate our behavior, are interdimensional. Therefore, they can either manifest by attaching themselves to a human being and control him or her from inside, or they can show themselves off as anything they want by using their avatar/light body, or they can either take a baby body, do a walk-in, or use a human body they have in storage. This body is dormant until the star being possesses it and gives it life. The particular body is genetically engineered to look exactly like a human, but may have enhanced abilities and more DNA available to them. To attach themselves to human beings, or any other beings at all, is an intrusion and a break of universal laws of non-interference, unless it's an agreed-upon decision between the two parties. There has to be an agreement for an ET to invade someone else's space, and such an agreement is often made between the intruder and the owner of the body on some level, whether it is through manipulation or by consent. The global elite, the PTB, are more often than not attached by such intruders who work through their body, either in conjunction with the original, human soul, or by kicking out the human soul to be able to operate the body in full, or by being born into a human body of a certain chosen bloodline, such as the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. By doing so, it's very hard to detect that such a body is run by an ET, except by its brilliance and unusual knowledge that a normal human, if ever so bright, normally doesn't have access to. Whole bloodlines are bred so that their bodies can be easily possessed in this manner. It becomes a generational thing and the reason why incest and inbreeding is such a big deal amongst the PTB. This is also why some people claim they have seen attachments on people, such as reptilian-shaped beings overlaying a human. It's not fiction, it's happening all around the globe and is much more common than anybody thinks, and the norm by which the PTB operate. Their ET masters are the ones who run the show through the human bodies and ultimately from the unseen dimensions. In a Pleiadian lecture, the Pleiadians said that among the 15 people in the room, 11 of them had attachments, although the people with attachments were all spiritual and very good-hearted people. Not all attachments are attaching themselves to purposely do harm, see next paper, but to attach to another being is intruding, still, not uncommon. There are many everyday humans who suffer from entity possession without being aware of it. People with erratic behavior that become patterns are often possessed, and it happens when the original soul/avatar, the human, is not in their body for any given reason. It may be when they are abusing drugs, alcohol, dedicating himself to inappropriate sex, pornography, and all the rest of it. When people do such things on a regular basis, the soul is leaving the body and the non-physical thinks, nobody home, it's vacant and I can take it. It's mine now. This doesn't mean a person necessarily gets an entity possession as soon as he or she is drinking at a party, it's often the morals and ethics of the person which determines if a non-physical entity wants to intrude, but also a person's tendency to be over-helpful and always open to everybody and everything and never be able to say no. That's a big opener of chakras without protection, inviting non-physicals to come in. We need to keep a bubble around ourselves and have boundaries. It's perfectly fine when someone is asking you if you want to do something to say, no, I don't think so. It's nice of you, but I have to say no. A low-frequency non-physical entity would probably not gain much from attaching itself to a highly moral human, it wouldn't be able to accomplish its low-frequency goals. An example of when an agreement is made between ETS and a human, for the ET or ETS to occupy the human body in a more benevolent way than they do with the PTB is through channeling. In mainstream channeling, the entity or entities occupy the body of the human while the channeling takes place, and thus the ETS can talk directly to an audience. Normally, such entities cannot stay attached to the vessel, human body, without the channeler's consent, because the channeler learns to recognize the energies. Other, more malevolent agreements can be done in dream state. If a person is bored with their life, or think that the being in the dream is overly powerful and exciting, the dreaming person may think it would be okay to have that powerful entity attached to them. When they wake up, however, they have no memories of such agreement. Therefore, if you feel you have company, make sure you tell the attachment, or attachments, that whatever agreement that may have been made in dream state, or when you were naive or had loose boundaries, are now void. Any attachment now has to leave, because all agreements are no longer valid. Then make sure you have strict boundaries in the future. You should be the only one home, so to speak, in your body. 9. Shape-shifting explained. We often see ancient gods depicted on old clay tablets, in statues, gargoyles, reptilian entities, the Anunnaki with their long, locked hair and braided beards, often giant in size, and more. I have spent a lot of ink writing about, and trying to figure out how on earth the Anunnaki can be depicted as giant humans when almost all extraterrestrials describe them as reptilians, as do many researchers, such as David Icke and others. Many have explained it away with that they wore masks and wigs, while others say that the old Sumerians, for example, were not allowed to depict the Anunnaki gods the way they really looked like. None of this is true. David Icke is the one of the researchers who has come closest, but although he is talking about reptilian shapeshifters constantly since the late 1990s, he oversees the obvious. He has no problem with apparent humans shapeshift into reptilians, but he is not, to my knowledge, speaking of the opposite. Why are the Sumerian gods depicted as humans? I brought this question up in level I, but have since then done a lot more research on it. This is how shapeshifting happens. A soul of a non-physical star being can make its avatar look however they want. If it fits the purpose, one moment the ET may look like our typical Anunnaki and then next moment like a dragon or a reptilian, or a typical human. And no one can tell, the being appears just as physical as you and I. Most shamans know about this, where David Icke's South African shamanic friend, Credo Mutwe, is only one, and this is also most certainly what happened to Michael Lee Hill when he thought he met Marduk in the genie bottle at the Sirius festival. When they shapeshift like that, the beings appear so physical that you can even shake hands with them without noticing that they are not really physical. LPGC, the rogue quantum physics group in California, knows this as well. They call it LERM, Light Encoding Reality Matrix, where the ET can use light to manipulate the minds of a human. This, to me, indicates quite clearly that we live in a hologram and the manipulative ET knows it. Now, let's take this into a higher perspective. When a star being becomes evolved enough, after has gone through his evolution and knows how to reach out in the multiverse, he can split his soul into other fragments and send them out on missions, or just explore the dimensions, exactly like I explained it in level I. Each smaller fragments have their own avatar. These new fragments, although separated from the original soul, are in reality not smaller than the original, but are extensions of it. You can think of it as a torch. If you then take another torch which is not lit up and put it into the fire of the first torch, it will lit up just as nicely as the first one, and you can't tell after a while which torch was lit up by which. Taken into consideration, they are not burning down, souls are never burning down. So, if a soul with its avatar is visiting a certain planet in this evolved state, it can land there and take on any shape and form that suits it. For example, if a soul/avatar is visiting Earth, it can take on the form of a human to blend in, and you and I wouldn't be able to see the difference, except in the eyes if we knew what we were looking for. Then, in a moment, the same alien soul can let its avatar shapeshift into another form, let's say reptilian. Then it may shapeshift to a giant Anunnaki god with long locked hair and a braided beard, This is very easy to do and it is happening all the time here on Earth. This is why people are seeing greys, reptilians, Mothmen and whatnot. Sometimes it's because the visitor wants you to see him that way, so he shapeshifts into that form. In the confusion that follows, exopolitical researchers are cataloging alien races left and right and work hard to make each species fit into the big picture when in fact it may often be the same alien race, showing themselves off as something they are not. That way it seems like we are being visited by a lot of different star races, when in actuality, they are a lot less, and most people don't even know how they look like. Why? Because the aliens are rarely showing themselves in their original form, unless they in fact are 3D beings like ourselves. Often, the onto-energetics don't have an original form, even. They have evolved far beyond that and travel the multiverse as a combined soul/avatar, feeling they don't need a physical body anymore. On occasion, when it fits their purpose, they may let their avatars become physical, but that's it. On the other side of the coin we have genetic engineering and manipulation. Like I said a few paragraphs above, star beings may have dormant bodies in storage that look very similar to ours to blend in. This was what the Anunnaki did, eventually. Some of them, who were depicted as giants, actually had bodies that were engineered to be giant, probably because they looked more godlike and respectful that way. Interestingly enough, LPGC, in their new report, is agreeing with that a massless being can mock themselves up to look exactly the way it wants in order to communicate with us here in 3D. I quote, "A living entity that was once a human being is now an energetic entity with a cloud-like form but still able to mimic a human form when trans-communicating with people in space-time. Emphasis not in original. Idiomaterial physics, a life physics of a bicasual universe/unum, p.69. For those who think ahead here, the above information may come as a shock, because it has implications. It means that it's more or less useless to catalog alien species and instead learn who is who by their nature rather than their physical form. I am not saying here, however, that there are no aliens at all in Earth near space who have come in their real form, but they are few. To do so, they need to be of a Type 2 technological civilization. Another option is that some of the aliens people see are in fact native to Earth and have lived here longer than humans. They are indeed earlier genetic experiments, used before the final Homo sapiens, the thinking man, was created. These beings live in remote areas, up in the mountains and under the ground. There were an abundance of earlier genetic experiments here on Earth who were abandoned in favor of Homo sapiens. So, if someone wants to classify and catalog all these different star races, be my guest, but I have the feeling he or she will go insane after a while, trying to sort out the confusion. Some races are quite easy to catalog, but it's harder to catalog their attributes, because there are star beings showing themselves off as each other. How do we know who is who? We don't. Speaking of abundance, there is an abundance of evidence showing these earlier experiments of beings that nowadays live underground. Excellent archaeologists like Brian Foerster and others have started to realize this. Many remnants from earlier strange species are still left here on Earth in form of giant skulls, strange-looking skulls and skeletons, some of them giant, indeed. These are very real and many of them are not hoaxes, although mainstream scientists are attempting to laugh them off and the media are sweating bullets, working hard to debunk such findings. Still, they can't anymore, because the evidence is very, very physical and you can hold it in your hand. And better yet, not even the best debunker in the world can debunk the facts we have at our convenience. Instead, media have started to ignore it, hoping it goes away. However, they find it more and more difficult to do. How can someone explain a giant, elongated skull with huge eye sockets and giant's jaws to the public? The mainstream scientists can't, so they put the lid on. Other, much braver scientists and archaeologists discard the lid and open it over and over again, and thanks to the internet, videos like Brian Foerster's can be shown in public. We owe a lot to this man for so persistently showing us the evidence. Do you think he gets a lot of funding for this? He doesn't. Check his YouTube account. This extraordinary man has made tons of videos proving that there were beings walking the earth in the past who didn't look like us at all. This video is just one of many, exposing an earlier experiment on Earth, before Homo sapiens sapiens came about. However, some of the giant skulls and skeletons found are no more than 500 to 1000 years old, which shows that these beings were walking among us at least until then. But what happened with them after that? Did they go extinct? There is a possibility that they did, but another more plausible explanation is that when the white man came and raided Latin and South America, these beings decided to move underground, where they hypothetically still live. The so-called hollow earth is teeming with life 3D and this is part of why people see reptilians and other strange creatures coming out from caves and tunnels, leading to whole realms underground. So I don't argue that reptilians and other strange creatures don't exist, I am just saying that most of them may be native to Earth. 10. Nano-travel and man-made UFOs. Many researchers, and people in general with an interest in the UFO phenomenon, are looking up in the sky, trying to catch a UFO with their video cameras, or maybe see one land, and a strange-looking creature come out from it. Some have spent a lifetime doing this to little prevail. It's frustrating and is given little result. Then, when a UFO researcher thinks he has some solid evidence, it's often debunked efficiently and can be proven as either a hoax, MK Ultra mind control, or the UFO was man-made. Why is it so hard to get solid evidence? The answer is, because UFOs run by star beings are normally not solid. So let's take a look at this from the information we have regarding the etheric composite, EC. If we have a star being normally dwelling in the void, they don't need a spaceship to travel from one place in space to another. Then we have the physical universe residents. There are stargates everywhere that go from one corner of the universe to the other, like highways in and between cities, states, and countries, or like veins and blood vessels in a body. You pick one, travel through it quite instantly and will easily reach your destination. When we talk about stargates, or bottlenecks, as some call them, we are talking about Einstein-Rosen bridges, like in figure 2 to 6 below. Instead of traveling a straight line, which would take forever, literally, if you travel long distance between stars, you travel through a bottleneck, enter a cosmic highway and quite quickly come out on the other side to your destination, or to a hub, where you change stargates, highways. It's like changing from Interstate 4 to Interstate 7 for example. Interstate 4 only takes you so far towards your destination, but if you change to Interstate 7 it will take you where you want to go. Interestingly enough, cutting-edge scientists are now embracing the metaphysical stargate theory more and more, and some of them even suggest that black holes, which could be the same thing as stargates, may be as small as the pin of a needle, and there may be several of them in your backyard. Anton Parks brings up something quite interesting in his chronicles regarding stargates, which is also supported by the Pleiadians in their book, Earth Pleiadian Keys to the Living Library. Stargates, besides allowing long-distance space travel, are also interdimensional passages, like launching ramps to other planes of existence. Once the stargates here on Earth are closed in 3D, they are closed to all dimensions, which means it is very hard for beings to come in here, and get out. Now, when some stargates have been opened up again, for good and for bad, more entities find their way in, but also important to remember, some beings not from Earth, who may have been stuck here, can now escape. Furthermore, Parks explained that according to his source, stargates can be either stationary or mobile. The tendency is that bigger stargates are usually stationary while the smaller ones move around. There are a number of stargates used for interstellar traffic, leading in and out from the planets all over the universe as well, so the traveler doesn't necessarily have to leave the planet's atmosphere to enter a stargate in space, it's there in a certain location on the planet itself. Same thing goes for Earth, there are different places where stargates are located, such as the following top 20. 1. Bermuda, the stargate used in the old Atlantean era. Served as a major gateway onto the planet. 2. Mexico/Central America. 3. Tibet. 4. The Nazca Lines. 5. Easter Island. 6. Mount Fuji. 7. Mount Shasta, California. 8. Lake Titicaca. 9. Sinai, the one stargate most important to the A.A.M.E/Anunnaki. 10. Uluru. 11. Pine Gap, Australia. 12. Siberia, Russia. 13. Agartha, Inner Earth. 14. Egypt. 15. South Africa. 16. Northern Sweden. 17. Great Britain. 18. France. 19. Peru. 20. North and South Poles. There are more stargates, of course, but the above seem to be the 20 most important, either in present time or throughout history. Most, some say all but 3, of these gates are currently closed due to that Earth was put in quarantine a long time ago, much more about that later, but they are all there and could be opened if we knew how, and were allowed to do so. The few that may be open at this time are the ones in Sinai, Mexico/South America, and Mount Shasta. There also seems to be another, smaller one open in Nevada, in the desert mountains around Nellis Air Force Base, which the so-called tall whites are using. However, these stargates are heavily guarded. Then there are a lot of minor stargates all over the planet, and those I have no idea at this point where they lead to. So let's say we want to travel from Earth to the Andromeda Galaxy, about 2.2 million light-years away. We would probably first connect with Peshmetan, the 9th passageway, on which Earth is sitting like a blockage, so it shouldn't be too hard to find if we knew what we were looking for. Taken into consideration that we have a star map and know the coordination, we would travel along this highway as far as it takes us in that direction and middle land at a hub somewhere, perhaps in Orion. From there, we would take another route, then another route and so on, until we reach our destination. This would take us to Andromeda fairly quickly. We are talking about days and weeks, perhaps much faster, compared to 2.2 million years if we would travel with the speed of light. So stargates are simply shortcuts in the aortas, veins and blood vessels of the universe, along which all inner and intergalactic traffic is running. In our universe, this is normally how space travel works. By entering a stargate, you automatically get access to all different dimensions, and you can decide on, or in, which frequency/dimension/density and in which local planetary time you want to arrive. Robert Morningsky, on his website, emphasizes over and over that all UFOs that people see in the skies which emit light are man-made, no exceptions. They are made with technology currently accessible to humans through TTP, technology transfer programs. Some of these UFOs that people see, if we are to take Morningsky seriously, are just test-driven, while others are used for travel within the solar system. Others are used by the military to abduct people for their own purposes, pretending to be aliens in order to blame them for the abduction, should the abductee start remembering. Lastly, some of them could be alien craft used by ETS to travel within the solar system only. Although Morningsky is certain there are no visible alien spaceships in the sky, I tend to disagree with him. I am sure it's possible to travel the stars with man-made spaceships, but a star race who is seeded and indexed to a certain planet have bodies which are suited to the environment for that particular planet. It has showed in human space programs, and this is not mentioned to the public, that astronauts can't endure very long in space. When they stay there at all, like on space stations, they constantly have to be replaced, or they'll get cancer, get mentally ill, or simply get sick from other radiation-related illnesses, and more. Long-distance travel in a human body is not physically possible, as it seems. It's like a fish in an aquarium, it wouldn't survive long on land, because it's not suited for that environment. This seems to be a problem that doesn't have a solution, according to whistleblowers from different NASA projects, but there are solutions even to this problem. An immediate solution would be to create hybrids who are more suited for space travel than the Earth-bound human body, who can overcome the problems bodies have in space and travel long distance. Such hybrids have been created in secret military bases, such as Area 51 and a lot of others. So this is one way for 3D beings from other star systems to visit us in the physical. The beings who navigate the craft are not always native to the planet from where the craft comes, but are enhanced hybridizations of the original star race. This still has a lot of limitations, but in our physical universe, which differs a lot from the KHAA, there are limitations, relatively speaking. Also, like I've hinted at earlier, there is a more sinister reason for some 3D species to travel in the physical by technological means, and this is the direction towards which mankind is heading, unless we change our minds and become part of the galactic community instead. We humans are in fact the only star race in the physical universe who can show others the way into the KHAA. I will expand on this throughout my papers. Both Morning Sky and Dr. Borden of LPGC, as we shall see, among others, acknowledge that there are lots of UFOs in the skies, inside and outside the atmosphere, but we can't see them with our current perceptions because they are tiny. In fact, they consist of the tiniest particles in the universe, nanoparticles, i.e. particles on a subquantum level. In other words, we are being visited by being from the KHAA as well as from our physical universe, but the way they travel through space is different. On his website, Morning Sky goes on explaining how some UFOs we see can also be aerial phenomena, unknown to science at this point in time, such as unusual weather phenomena etc. This would, says Morning Sky, explain how some people see pulsating UFOs that move in and out of our reality. He continues by explaining that if someone from another star system wishes to visit Earth, they shrink themselves down to nanoparticles, think themselves to a destination and reach there almost instantly, still as nanoparticles. This is correct, but only if this someone is from the KHAA, which consists of dimensions out of reach from our physical universe. We have to be able to leave the 4% before we can be like those of the 96%. That's the bottom line of it. I have asked an anonymous source if ETs who use nano travel in spaceships at all, and if so, are these also shrunk down to nanoparticles? His reply was that yes, aliens sometimes, but usually don't, use spaceships when they travel, and they too can be shrunk when they enter the Stargate. However, these spaceships are not technological but a part of the being herself. Like I said earlier, someone from the KHAA can manifest in whatever way they want. This can be very hard for our neurological system to understand. These beings are multidimensional to the extreme, and we want everything explained in logical, linear form. That's not always possible. Therefore, I don't want to be too linear and logical and technical in my information either, because that defeats the purpose of learning how to become multi-D, but I'll do my best so the reader can get their heads around these concepts. So, the logical follow-up question would be, what happens when the aliens and their craft reach their destination? Do they come back to normal size? According to my anonymous source, it depends on their intentions. Why did they come in the first place? If the alien visitors are intruders, they normally don't come in craft at all. They either take over bodies on Earth and run and slash or control them, or they have already bodies here in storage somewhere in the solar system which they use. These bodies, to blend in, are often human bodies, like yours and mine. Another thing they can do is to start anew and go through the whole cycle of being born, childhood and eventually adulthood, which would not being considered an intrusion. According to a reliable source, the so-called Anunnaki in Sumerian times and earlier either occupied human bodies here on Earth, used bodies in storage, or shape-shifted into humans. Some of them were born on Earth as the result of mating between their own star race and humans, using their bodies in storage to accomplish this. We must realize that these beings were high-tech and could do things we are only starting to understand today. In fact, they were the ones who introduced magic to this world. They can trick somebody in a crowd of people, making him or her see the alien in a certain way, while the rest of the crowd only see a human. However, their eyes often give them away. You can tell by their eyes if they are not human. The alien energy of the ET bleeds through, and this is the reason why people can see slit reptilian eyes sometimes in humans. Others may have cat eyes, or bird eyes, something that has been noticed in many politicians and other PTB reptilian eyes in particular. Of course, this would explain a few things. First of all, there are ETs among us, whom we probably pass every now and then on the street, perhaps almost on a daily or weekly basis if we live in a city, without even realizing they are not human. Barbara Marciniak, in her book, Earth, explains via her channeled Pleiadian entities, that in the future, when humans are multidimensional again, and once again will become the guardians of the living library, aliens who match the vibration can come in, ask for permission, and enter a human body to access a certain information they need from the living library. It will happen with the human's consent. Once the alien soul fragment has received the information they are wanting to access, they leave. It can almost be compared to a bee landing in a flower, taking some nectar, and then leave. How can that be? Because aliens either nano-travel, or if they live in the physical universe, they can leave their bodies. The difference between now and in the future is that today aliens come here without permission, trick themselves into entering a human body, and start controlling it. In the future, it will be a mutual exchange. But beware! Don't try this now. If an ET suggests they want to do something like this, don't accept it. If this is the way it's going to be done in the future, we still have a long way to go before we get to that point. Now, let's say a group of aliens want to travel to Earth from somewhere in another galaxy, residing in the KHAA, dark matter/energy. They probably won't need to bring any equipment with them, but just come as they are, as fires/avatars. But if they need to use technology, they can do so. With their mind, when they have the knowledge to do this, they shrink themselves, and whatever they want to bring with them, to small nanoparticles. They may even want to use some spacecraft to travel to their destination. So they shrink that too into nanoparticles and off they go. This is not as strange as it may sound. The only reason it sounds strange is because we can't think in these terms as long as we are stuck here in 3D. In the multiverse, this is how aliens in general, if they reside in the KHAA, travel through space and time. They are well aware of the nano world and how it works, something that Earth rogue scientists like LPGC are learning and teaching about as well. Like one source said, those who control the nano world control the universe. This is why so much funding is spent on nanotechnology here on Earth right now. Because everything is energy and can be broken down into very small nanoparticles, a star race can potentially bring anything with them on their journey, e.g. tools and machinery they need in the new star system, millions of light years away. An extremely advanced race, I'm sure, could even arrive without any tools to a totally barren solar system and create tools and machinery by manipulating atoms and molecules and magically build the equipment they need, although they came totally empty-handed to begin with. So, when our imagined spacecraft with aliens travel from this other galaxy to Earth, they can do so in nano form in a relatively quick manner through stargates and hubs and reach Earth in next to no time if they know the coordinates. And if they want to build 3D spacecraft in the new solar system, they often leave them here if they return home for a while, hidden somewhere in mountains or underground, to be used the next time they come back. This is just an example of how it could hypothetically work. Now, regarding the KHAA dwellers, how will they show up here on Earth? How will the craft look like? Well, when they arrive, they are still of nano size and can't be seen by the human eye the way we are trained and manipulated, so they are invisible to us. However, if they so wish, and it fits their purpose, they can resize themselves so that they can be seen. We will then observe them as going in and out of reality, one moment they are there and another moment they are gone. When they are stationary, they often pulsate. Morning Sky explains that these are unexplained weather phenomena, and to a large degree I think he is right, but if a nano-sized space traveler in a spaceship wants to show off for any reason, they can use their avatar to do so. We think of the avatar as a light body, but when we say body, it doesn't have to mean human body. A body can even be a spaceship, because the fire/soul can reshape the avatar to any shape and form imagined, and more. However, when we see a pulsating light in the sky, we still won't know if this is a real UFO or not, because our secret government has the technology to fake such a sighting with holographic technology to confuse us. Interestingly enough, Dr. A.R. Borden and his team of LPGC scientists are using a form of nano-travel themselves when they explore the multiverse. AR says they use what they call ENS. Extension neurosensing, which is a form of advanced remote viewing. Remote viewing is also commonly being used by intelligence agencies around the world to spy on other countries and governments, and citizens as well, one must presume. When using ENS, the traveler is laid down in a sarcophagus and uses an avatar, same choice of words, to leave the body and move through space and time with full perceptions. What they do is nothing less but nano-travel, with some help from technology. 11. The dying race analogy. Let me give an example of how an alien race would come to another planet and seed it with a body type that may be totally different from their own. Let's say that we have an old race somewhere in the universe, who has exhausted their resources on the planet of origin, and they are a dying species but have the technology to create life elsewhere. Nuclear war and destruction of their planet in general has gotten to a point where it's just a matter of time until they are extinct, unless they are doing something. So they come to this planet which seems like it could house them in the future. If they live in the physical universe, they use technology to travel the dimensions. However, they don't land here in 3D bodies because they don't want to enter an atmosphere which would be hostile and poisonous to them. Instead, with help from technology, they explore the circumstances on a soul level and return to their home planet with the information. Then, again with the help from technology, they split themselves up in a lot of different dimensions to see all possible outcomes and pick the best course of action for the dimension they are in. Once they see their most favorable solution, they build bodies that can most easily adapt to the life situation on the new planet by using nanotechnology, and they plant these adaptable bodies in the new, for the original species, harsh environment. Then the dying species can insert themselves on a soul level into these new bodies and survive on the new planet while letting their old world die. It happens on occasion, and possibly not too seldom, that a species who has exhausted their options on their home planet search for other worlds where their species can survive, and this is quite a common way to do it. Seeding planets as creator gods can thus be done out of necessity as well as a natural process in a species development. If a species seeds a planet because they have misused energy, they are, however, most likely to continue doing the same thing on the new world. A more common reason to seed planets out of necessity is because of overpopulation, natural catastrophes that could not be avoided with the technology they housed, or other similar reasons. If so, it's reasonable that the dying species is looking for uninhabited planets, or planets in a resting stage, to start life anew. 12. A personal story. Related to what we have talked about in this paper, I have a personal story I'd like to tell. In 1986, I was in Copenhagen, Denmark, for a couple of weeks, living in a hotel. Outside the hotel was a typical busy Danish street with stores everywhere. This was before the shopping malls really took off in Northern Europe. One day I was walking down the street in one direction. There was a decent amount of people out walking and shopping. All of a sudden, on the other side of the street, amongst a crowd of people, but walking alone, was the strangest creature. He was slightly shorter than people in general, perhaps around 5 feet tall. His walking was very unusual, too, as he almost walked like a drunk, but didn't appear like one. His clothes were very similar to that of a scarecrow. He had a small hat on a very large head, which was shaped like a giant pear, where the thinner part of the fruit was the neck. The neck was very wrinkled and his face very big and out of proportion to the rest of the body. He actually looked pretty much like a scarecrow walking around, but his head was not a mask, I can tell that for certain. His mouth was very small and I can't recall his eyes, but I know they were not big, as those of a typical grey alien. He was totally bald. I just remember he was staring at me as he walked past me on the other side of the street, heading the other direction. I estimate that the distance between us, with the street in the middle, was 75 to 80 feet. I didn't want to stop and stare at him at first, thinking he was a deformed human who didn't want attention from people who thought he was weird, but when he passed me I stopped and stared in awe. The creature continued walking up the road as I watched him from his behind, but then he turned around, again singled me out in the crowd and stared at me before he disappeared up the road. I thought to myself that this was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen, because this person was obviously not human. But that is not all. The absolute strangest thing of it all was that no one paid attention to him but me. Hundreds of people passed him and should have seen him from both sides of the street, because he stuck out like a sore thumb big time. However, everybody just went on with their business. I should add I was walking alone at the time, and that I didn't find the creature threatening in any way, but I did feel uncomfortable, which could have been just from the unusual experience. However, he did not emit any good vibrations either, but was pretty neutral. When I came back to the hotel, I didn't tell anybody about my experience. I thought it was very weird that no one reacted but me. First I thought he may be a local mutant that people were used to seeing in that part of town, but it was tourist season, and probably a third of the people out that day were not from town, and some of them, like me, probably not even from the country. And here is the kicker. A few days later, I can't remember how many days, I saw him again at the exact same place. It was almost like a déjà vu. Once again he was picking me out in the crowd of busy people, just staring at me as he continued walking. However, this time I was a little bit more prepared, but still shocked. I was young and didn't know what I know now, so I didn't take the appropriate action to go over and perhaps talk to him. Instead, I stopped someone in the street, who showed to be a local, and asked him if that person on the other side of the street is living in this neighborhood. The person whom I stopped looked in the direction I pointed, seemed confused, and scanned the area I was pointing at, but couldn't distinguish which person I was relating to. So the person I asked just continued walking, leaving me alone while this strange creature started disappearing up the road. I was totally stunned, because I didn't understand why no one could see him. It should have been obvious for the person I stopped to immediately grasp whom I was talking about. You never see a creature like that anywhere else. I never saw him again and went back to Sweden a few days later, still in mystery. And I have no sense of missing time. Up until today, I don't know who or what that creature was, but obviously he was only visible to me, no one else stopped to look. Now, with the knowledge I have, perhaps he was an ET, manipulating light to trick my eyes to see him in this certain way similar to a scarecrow. We know this can be done, even to separate out one person in a crowd to see something no one else can see. There was no internet at that time, so I couldn't run back to the hotel and look things up on the internet. But wait! This is not the end of the story. Every once in a while over the years, ever since that summer's day in Copenhagen in 1986, I have thought about this incident, trying to make sense of it. I have looked on the internet, attempting to find any information from that time period in Copenhagen, wanting to know if someone else has had the same experience with the scarecrow. Nothing. Maybe now, when I publish this paper, someone will come forward. I haven't posted anything about it earlier for some reason. I could have done it anonymously, so maybe this is the right time? Then, about a month ago, I picked up Whitley Strieber's new book, Solving the Communion Enigma: What Is to Come, and started reading. Dream of my surprise, getting my coffee in the wrong pipe, when I get to page 42, where Strieber writes. In February of 2004, a city councillor in Winchester in England had an extraordinary sighting. Councillor Adrian Hicks reported that I was near the Works bookshop when I saw this strange woman, a humanoid walking with a penguin-like gait. She had very large prominent eyes and was twirling her hands in a circular motion. Strieber interviewed Mr. Hicks, who was completely straightforward about his description of this being. She was wearing an odd, frilly dress and had long hair and was unmistakably not human. She also seemed perfectly happy and at ease as she strolled down the street. He told me that people walked past her without noticing, and that he still believes that somebody else must surely have seen her and that he hopes they will come forward. This sounds very similar to what I experienced, except that the being looked different. Strieber goes on in the same section of the book, describing his own and other people's experiences, similar to this one, when people have spotted greys in bookstores whom have even coming forth when a person is sitting in a traffic jam, asking the person where he's heading. No one else, except the selected person, seemed to be able to see these beings. Are these possible ETs trying to tell us something? Absolutely. So, what was the being I saw trying to tell me? Up to this day, I have no clue. Perhaps he was telling me what was to come and that I would look into these things in the future, which is now. That could be one layer of it, but it feels there is more to it. And again, no missing time or trauma related to this encounter, just a neutral feeling. 13. Law of one out of proportions. Creation is endless. There are multiple upon multiple universes under development simultaneously, and new ones are created all the time. And all these universes are teeming with life and are inhabited by a myriad of different life forms in different stages of development. Therefore, it is not correct to say that we are all going towards being one with Source/the Mother. This is not our purpose, we are here to be individuals. So in a sense, the law of one that so many people are talking about today really has been taken out of proportion. We here on Earth are still young souls in comparison with many others out there in the multiverse, and we have not even started exploring the stars as we shall see later. The original human souls here on Earth, as individually aware, are no more than about 250,000 to 300,000 years old, which is a blink of an eye from a universal perspective. It is common belief amongst those who promote the law of one that we are going to ascend to a certain, preset numbers of dimensions or densities, and then we will merge with Source. Not so. Our purpose is to create, not to become void. We are supposed to become creator gods in endless cycles of creation. This is the whole purpose with us being here. Creation is seemingly endless and can expand indefinitely. Law of one is a true law in the sense that we are all one with the Mother, who ultimately created and gave us of her fire, something divine that she invested in us so we can pay her back by having great experiences and contribute by letting the goddess take a part of our unique experiences and make her and her universes expand in an as peaceful way as possible. And with humans it's even greater than that. We were meant to be a very special investment, as we shall see later. We are truly royal, and we are truly divine. 14. The soul is alone. It has come to my knowledge that the goddess is lending the souls to beings in the multiverse. Aren't star beings their own once they are created? The answer is yes, with a catch to it. The last thing the goddess wants is a universe which stagnates and doesn't expand because the souls in it stop creating and evolving to become more aware, loving, and compassionate. Some may argue that this will happen anyway, it's just a matter of time and a soul will evolve. Not necessarily so. It all comes back to misuse of energy. It's quite common in the development of a species that they somewhere down the road will misuse energy in one way or another, but after a while they realize their mistake and stop doing it. However, this does not always happen, and when misuse of energy becomes a big part of the daily life of a civilization, the misused energy must be taken from somewhere. What happens is that the particular star race that is misusing energy out of proportions is depleting another part of the universe from energy, and the irresponsible soul group become like cosmic vampires. Therefore, a star race has a responsibility to help propelling the multiverse forward, not backwards. If they neglect this rule, the being who does this, or the whole star race, are in debt to the goddess. That's the easiest way to explain it. Often, it is not the evolving star race who instigates this misuse of energy, which can take enormous proportions, which we shall see later, but another race who is controlling them, but it still is the evolving race's responsibility to wake up to the fact that they are participating in something very destructive, which in fact can lead to their demise as a species or worse. It's one thing to be manipulated into something destructive, but even those who are must at one point wake up to the fact that they are manipulated and start taking responsibility. Otherwise, other innocent star races in the multiverse will experience the negative end of the spectrum as well. So, if there is a loan or a debt, there is a payback plan. This applies to individual loans, bank loans, and as above so below, also in cosmic terms. In the development of a species, just like with a baby here on Earth, we need others to guide us through the baby stage, the child stage, and adolescence until we reach adulthood, which is when we are supposed to be able to take care of ourselves and create something for the whole soul group. So at first, we are using the energies and the parents to a certain degree while we are learning, and also, occasionally, from the rest of the soul group in general, but we pay it back during adulthood by contributing to the survival of the whole soul group by doing what we are good at, and we are here talking about a saner society than the one we live in. On a bigger scale, the soul group is borrowing energy from the cosmos from which they were born. If the soul group, when they have reached adulthood, don't want to go out and create positively, the loan will be considered irredeemable, because the soul group doesn't want to pay the loan off. Then a couple of things could hypothetically happen. The goddess could pay off the debt for them by balancing out the energy, taking more of her own and add it to the universe on an ongoing basis, so that the lazy soul group can continue its misuse of energy and its vampirism and hopefully learn, eventually. Albeit, the more the soul group misuses its energy, the more the goddess has to add into the universe. This, of course, is in very simple terms. On a more complex level, when the misuse of energy is enormous, it depletes the goddess universe from its essence. We have learned that there is an abundance of energy, so what's the big deal? Well, it's true that there is an abundance of energy to begin with, but there are many universes, and each universe is designated a certain amount of energy. If that energy is hijacked, stolen, and then misused, there is going to be a depletion somewhere. As we shall see later, this is what is happening in our own universe, and we humans are part of this giant misuse of energy, and it's not looked lightly upon by different star races out there. The same thing happens in business here on Earth. A person wants to buy a house and a bank is giving him a loan. The agreement is that the person will pay off the loan through a long-term plan, with interest. However, there is a recession or even a depression because of misuse of energy, money being energy in this case, and the person can't pay off the house loan. The bank is trying to get back what they can, but way down the line, they may have to write off the rest of the loan as unredeemable. If this happens on a larger scale, money becomes a scarcity and the Federal Reserve prints more money. However, in the long run, they'll have to stop print more money, or we'll get superinflation and the whole society crashes. We have all gone through recessions here on Earth, so the above example is familiar to us. But the same thing happens on a soul group level. If a species doesn't break even with the energy that was lent to them and then start creating to add something to the loan, can be compared to interest in the banking business, the goddess constantly has to fill the gaps where the non-evolving soul group steals the energy, with new energy, which could be used so much better, and besides, eventually there will deplete the essence of the KHAA, no more money printing in the above analogy. 15. The endless cycles of creation, wheels within wheels. Now let us summarize how a cycle of creation could look like. I will do it in list form, because, as we know, the logical mind wants to have everything organized. It's a 3D thing, but it helps us to better understand otherwise complicated subjects. The Mother Goddess creates something in what is easiest explained as a pond, consisting of 12 ripples, which can also be compared to sound waves. Each ripple is one universe. As far as we know, universes come in groups of 12. Each universe in a particular pond has its own overseer, beings evolved from previous universes, and the Mother Goddess is sitting on seat number 13, being the overseer of all the 12 universes, like a supervisor of sorts. The ripples eventually become round, like a sun or a planet, and is ready to start its expansion and to have intelligent life inserted into it. The goddess creates our universe from one of the ripples in the pond by lending her energy to it. The reason for her creation is to help her expand and become more self-aware. The Mother creates the dimensions and densities and the galaxies, nebulae, stars, and planets in descending order. Each of these creations becomes a sentient, highly evolved being, born directly from the womb of the Mother, which is the center of the galaxies, respectively. She lets these evolved beings do their jobs and prepare for the next step in the evolution of this young universe. In the whole process, it is my understanding that the other 12 highly evolved creator gods, the overseers of the other 11 ripples/universes, plus the new overseer of this particular one, are helping the Mother in her creation of this new universe. They are the builders. These creator gods are seeding the universe, panspermia, with the seeds for intelligent life. This initial seeding is being done on planets and planetoids/asteroids in different part of the universe. Life then evolves on planets in different galaxies, plus when asteroids and other heavenly bodies hit a lifeless planet, it may contain life-bearing seed and life eventually starts evolving on that planet as well. And so it goes on for a while. After millions or billions or years, a certain species evolves on a particular planet. When they have reached a certain level of understanding and spiritual awakening, they may choose to go out and explore the dimensions and densities. They have evolved freely, without the avail of amnesia. The builders, who helped the goddess create this particular universe we live in, are overseeing the process when a species evolves, or give them the tools so they can survive on their own, and if a 3D body dies in an accident and the soul/avatar leaves the body, it knows right away how to take a new one as soon as one becomes available. In the beginning, before a soul group is evolved enough, the creator gods are overseeing the project and help out in the creation process until the species learn themselves how to do it, either by sexual reproduction or later on, by genetic engineering. Sometimes it happens that a species becomes warlike as a part of their development and they want to conquer, rather than explore space and its dimension. In that case, the species may mass produce, because they need the numbers to be able to overpower other races. This, however, is not necessarily the norm, but it happens. With time, such a species may come to their senses and start respecting life and creation as a whole, and as something beautiful, and the destructive pattern stops. When the species is evolved enough to understand the multiverse they live in, they may, as individuals of the soul group, or a soul group as a whole, become appointed creator gods of their own. They then travel the dimensions and start seeding life, directed panspermia 26, on different planets, often leaving their own imprints there. Before they start creating life on a chosen planet somewhere in the universe, they always ask the sun and the planet for permission. If permission is given, they may go ahead. These creator gods are here called founders or Kadatu. The founders then, if they so wish, create a new intelligent species, often based upon their own DNA to some degree. Thus, we created you in our image, and perhaps mix it with DNA from other species to create an interesting, unique effect. It may take some experimentation before they get it right and feel that their new species is sufficient. When the vessels, bodies, are created, the creator gods are asking for permission to borrow soul energy from the mother goddess to create souls/avatars who can operate the bodies of this new species. So, at the same time as the bodies are created, the souls/avatars are created as well from intelligent energy. Often, the urge to reach for the stars is embedded within the DNA of the dominant species of the planet, can be one or more species. Then the founders leave the new species alone and let them evolve by themselves, but are normally overlooking the experiment to see how it goes. If they are not pleased, they may adjust some things. At the same time, these same creator gods, who can split up into more fire/avatar units, may create other life forms elsewhere, while their creations evolve and normally become creator gods themselves and go out to create their own species. When beings become founders, they first turn feminine, as a natural process and stay that way from here on. Later on, the founders usually evolve further. Their fire grows with their compassion and understanding and they become stars, who are always sentient beings, highly evolved, pulsating with fire. The star then splits itself into smaller units which become the planets and the moons, and eventually we have a newborn solar system. The planets themselves are very evolved beings, coming directly out from the womb or their star/sun. Other creator gods who have learned how to go out and seed life will now come and ask for permission to begin the process of panspermia in this new solar system, and the star and the planets may approve and the whole cycle starts all over again, like wheels within wheels, cycles within cycles. Eventually, the star evolves and becomes a nova or a supernova and leaves a cloud of stardust around it. The next step is normally that the star becomes a white dwarf and cools off while it is expanding elsewhere into something else. The planets that were orbiting the star usually follow the star in its development. Sometimes, often after a supernova explosion, a nebula is formed. This is the stardust remaining from the exploding star. However, from my understanding, this stardust is like a panspermia project in itself, and once a being is ready to become a star in its development, these clouds/nebulas support the progress and stars are born in these nebulae. A star, whose next step is to become a nebula, doesn't necessarily need to inhabit its own stardust, but can, from what I understand, evolve and become a nebula elsewhere in the same galaxy. The nebula now gives birth to a cluster of stars who form their own planet, and the nebula becomes the parent and overseer. After that, it's time for the nebula to become a galaxy. She now is overseeing everything that happens in her particular galaxy, probably until the universe has reached its goal and starts retracting and imploding. The next step from there would be to become an overseer of a whole universe. The goddess may appear in a manifested version of herself and appoints the being. When the overseer of a universe is done with that part of its development, she may want to become the overseer of a whole pond, which is always created by the mother goddess herself, just like all the universes in that pond. So, now it seems like we've come full circle, but in fact, creation continues. If we use the analogy with the spider and the spider web, there are still infinite areas of potentiality that yet has to be created, so when needed, the mother goddess can continue spinning her web and creation continues. Is there an end to creation? From my understanding, the end is when the goddess decides to end it, if ever. A single universe is completed when it has completed its goal, which was set before it was created.